I'm Kevin Shaw, and you're watching the Watercraft Journal. Hey guys, Kevin Shaw here, Editor-in-Chief of the Watercraft Journal. We have a very special episode for you today. First and foremost, we're sharing it with Greg Gaddis of Greenhulk Garage. Say hi, Greg.
How y'all doing?
And we got our hands on two of the top tier luxury watercraft available in the market today. The 2022 Sea-Doo GTX Limited 300 and the all new 2022 Kawasaki Ultra 310LX. That's the top of the line model that Kawasaki introduced. This one MSRP's at $19,199 and this one MSRP's at $18,299, and that is, of course, you can find a dealership to sell to you at MSRP. So we're here at the Fall Mud Bug. It's mid-October, but it's actually beautiful outside. We've been enjoying a whole weekend of riding, and we've been going through a ton of gas on these two supercharged machines, and we want to give you a little bit of information first on how these two skis compare one to another, and then go over some of the highlights of each one of them, and then we'll give you our final thoughts. So first, by the numbers, the Sea-Doo comes at 1,630 cc's or 1.6 liter, making 300 horsepower. What's the max RPM on a stock Sea-Doo?
About 8,000.
Just over 8,000. We talk about 8,040, 8,060.
Yeah, somewhere
depending on how good your conditions are. And Kawasaki's coming back with its 1,492 cc four-cylinder four-stroke, supercharged with an Eaton TVS blower, making a true 310 horsepower. Those are two really thirsty machines and two really big high horsepower machines that I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to love. The changes that Kawasaki made for 2022 just for the powertrain is the all-new Kawasaki fly-by-wire throttle. Previously there was a cable with a spring-loaded throttle body. This year it is all entirely fly-by-wire. That allows the Kawasaki now to have a lot more digital interface, better engine management control, and it's able to monitor a lot of what the health of the engine is doing. So Kawasaki really stepped up to the 21st century when it came to engine monitoring for the same engine that they've pretty much been using since 2014. Now, obviously, the Sea-Doo remains pretty much unchanged since the first introduction of the ST3 platform back in 2018. For 2022, besides the new metallic mist color, you also get the tech package. That is the new 9-inch screen with the sound system, and it's all operated using the BRP Go app, and we'll show you some of that interface in just a little bit. For Kawasaki, everything above the bond line is different, and that really spells for a totally different machine. If you haven't already, make sure to check out our review on this, and Greg's gonna have a review on it as well at Greenhulk Garage. We got two different opinions on it, but a lot of the stuff overlaps. But what you can see from the outset is a major change in ergonomics. Rider height has been dropped several inches. Seat height has been dropped by almost 1 3/4 inches, but the footwells themselves have dropped the rider, especially if he's standing up, almost 3 inches deeper into the ski. What a lower center of gravity gives you is a far better sense of balance and a far better interaction with the watercraft when you want to lean and roll into a turn. It has radically changed how the Ultra behaves when you're going around tight corners cutting a buoy. Other major changes that Kawasaki made to the Ultra are how storage is handled on the watercraft. You no longer have a center glove box, but you have two of these gull wing doors that open up to 10 gallons of storage. We're going to go over that in a little bit more detail. And of course you have the front storage in front. And they also added some really neat features, including adjustable seating. You can actually move the seat back 3 different locations. And of course, how you interface with the dashboard. The new Kawasaki TFT dashboard is operated through a new toggle dial, a jog dial, and you're able to navigate that screen, as well as a other jog dial that's up here that controls the sound system. There's a lot of interface, there's a lot of neat high-tech interactions that are going on with the new Kawasaki. We'll go into it in a little bit more detail. But when it comes to pound for pound, we want to see how the Kawasaki and the Sea-Doo square up against each other. Between the two, fuel capacity, we're at 21.1 gallons in the Kawasaki and 18.5 for the Sea-Doo. That's the same gas tank that you're gonna see in all of the ST3s, and that is the same gas tank that all the Ultras get. Dimensionally, both these skis are surprisingly comparable in size. Width-wise, the Kawasaki comes in at 47 inches wide, as the Sea-Doo comes in at 49.4 inches, and that's predominantly due to the hull design and having that really flat shelf right here, allowing the Watercraft to be very stable at slow speeds. Lengthwise, we see the biggest difference between these two, and that's predominantly because the Kawasaki has the new Ultra deck, which adds about 5.5 inches onto the transom of the Kawasaki. That puts the Kawasaki at 140 inches, 0.9, so almost 141. The Sea-Doo is a little bit shorter, coming in exactly 5 inches shorter than the Kawasaki. Now, interestingly enough, the 310X, which doesn't have the Ultra deck, is almost exactly the same length as the Sea-Doo, surprisingly, half an inch shorter. So anyone who says that the Kawasaki is a big old bear compared to a Sea-Doo, they need to do their math. Now, obviously, the big hurdle that we have between these two skis is weight. It's important to note the Kawasaki lists curb weight versus dry weight. Give me a little bit of information on what curb weight versus dry weight means.
So curb weight's going to be fully loaded down. You've got your battery, oil, fuel. Dry weight, it's going to be stripped of all of that. It's just what the bare ski weighs without any fluids in it, and it's just what the bare ski weighs without any fluids in it and without any extras added on to it.
Exactly. When Sea-Doo lists their dry weight, that is 0 engine coolant, that's 0 fuel, and that's not even a battery. Kawasaki throws all that into the mix. So that's why you see Kawasaki coming in at 1,089.3 pounds versus the Sea-Doo that's listed at a featherweight 849, but that's their dry weight. So when you calculate for 18.5 gallons of fuel, for coolant and a battery, that puts the Sea-Doo's curb weight, mind you there's a difference, curb weight versus dry weight, it puts the Sea-Doo at 974. Now that's not too far off from the 1,089 if you think maybe 120 pounds is not that much of a difference. It really is. So what do you think accounts for all the extra weight on the Kawasaki versus the Sea-Doo? Number one, Sea-Doos are made out of what's called CM Tech. That's a proprietary process where they take an acrylic sheet, they vacuum mold it into the shape of a deck and a hull, and then it's put into an injection mold where their fiberglass is liquefied and pressed into a mold and then cured. Kawasaki, on the other hand, old school SMC fiberglass and gel coat. It's a lot stronger, it's a lot heavier, it's a lot more durable. So that's where you're getting a lot of the heft difference with the Kawasaki. Other things to consider are all the added features that Kawasaki has on the new Ultra LX that are simply not present on the Sea-Doo, and we're going to go over those. So we talked about how they compare dimensionally. Let's talk about what they share as far as features go. Both have Bluetooth sound systems that interface with your phone. The BRP Premium sound system now communicates through the dashboard and is used either via Bluetooth directly or hooked up through a USB port in the glove box and through BRP Go. For Kawasaki,
So Kawasaki's got the Jet Sound 4S, which has 4 coaxial speakers, and it actually performs very well. With the 4 speakers, it's got a lot of clarity to them, and it's extremely loud.
So one of the biggest complaints that we had was that over 60 miles an hour, most of the factory sound systems would drown out. Not so with the Kawi.
Not at all. We were going wide open, and my girlfriend even had to tell me to turn the sound system down because even at those speeds, it was just too loud.
Okay, so we have one that's too loud and one that's not loud enough when you're at full throttle on a wide open open stretch. So that's pretty interesting. The other things that they do share are actually integrated into the ECU, and that is that both feature mode systems, meaning that you can go from a no wake mode by a single press of a button. So for any no wake zone, you can also toggle through a medium mode or a touring mode for Sea-Doo, and it's medium for the Kawasaki. There is a sport mode for the Sea-Doo, and that is full That's full power mode for the Kawasaki. There's also learning mode for the Kawasaki, as well as slow mode for the Sea-Doo. So you do have a series of modes that you can pick through. You can toggle through those. And to boot, both of these supercharged skis do offer a true launch control mode that can be for a one-time shot or for continual launches. So those are a lot of things that are shared between these two machines. A couple of remaining features for the Kawasaki that are really unique are obviously the new visibility lights. They're not headlights. They don't cast a beam. They're not going to help you out for driving at night. It's just a high visibility light, the same thing that you would see on a visibility spout on the back of a Yamaha. Then you have the backwards facing camera. That is really good for if you're towing a raft, if you got your kids on a raft and you don't want to swivel your head back a bunch of times, you just turn on the reverse facing camera and you get a really good range of vision to see them. And in fact, you can zoom in 2 more times. So that's kind of nice for those guys who are doing a lot of towing. And then the last feature, which believe it or not, Greg really liked, was the adjustable seat.
Absolutely. So straight out the box, I thought the ride position on this thing was absolutely terrible. I wanted to get off of it and get on a different ski. It was just that bad. And the reason for that is because it was so far forward. I felt like my elbows were in my stomach. It just did not feel right. But thankfully, it has an adjustable seat, so we were able to scoot the seat back, and the ride position was almost perfect. I had 0 complaints, and just that little difference felt amazing to me.
Great. And both skis, it does bear noting that both skis do have adjustable steering. They have 5 points of articulation. You can go up. With the Sea-Doo, it takes the dashboard with it. So you get to do that. On the Kawasaki, it takes this new reposition bar and it does put it up a little bit higher. You do get a little bit of an ape hanger feel if you're sitting down, but the highest setting is gonna be great when you're riding standing up, which is my preferred preference when it comes to riding an Ultra. All that being said, there's a lot of really neat things that are baked into the new Kawasaki that aren't found on the Sea-Doo, and there's a lot of features in the Sea-Doo behavioral-wise that simply are not found on the Kawasaki. Greg had noted that these forward-facing splash deflectors are really neat, but the Sea-Doo doesn't need them because the Sea-Doo has it all designed into the hull, which sprays the water out in a very flat wake versus the Kawi, which you'll see in some video, shoot it up in a V formation. So again, that's a little bit of the behavior that you see from the ST3 hull versus a true deep V hull, which really cuts that water up versus the ST3, which shoots it out sideways. One of the biggest innovations that Sea-Doo made back in 2018, which pretty much revolutionized how we used a lot of our personal watercraft, was its link attachment system. For the Sea-Doo, you can see we're running the link cooler on the back. Got it full of ice, got it full of drinks. For the new Ultra deck, they have their own rack system, which is also, like the Sea-Doo, proprietary to the brand. We simply just haven't gotten our hands on any of the racks, so it's really hard for me to make any sort of decision on them just because they're kind of unobtainium right now. So when we get the opportunity to mess with the new rack system for Kawasaki, we'll be able to give you guys a better analysis of how we feel about it. But for right now, Link is tried and true, and I had a bunch of stuff at home that I could throw on. I could put on extra gas, I could put on the cooler. I even have one of the travel bags. I chose the cooler.
Yeah.
Now, the one attribute that I think is a little bit of a pinch point is when it comes to storage. There's ease of access of storage, and then there's just plain out quantity of storage. Storage is a little bit of a hot topic for these two machines because it's not perfect for either. Most people absolutely love the center storage of the ST3 hull. Super easy to open, super easy to access. The gas filler neck is right there. You don't have to double over the handlebars. It's great. The problem is that it totals out the watercraft at just over 24 gallons of total storage. That's really not a lot of room. And of course, the Sea-Doo just doesn't have a really functional glove box. You can maybe cram your wallet in there, and that is if you don't have a big phone that doesn't fit inside of the pocket. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the glove box. For 2022, Kawasaki totally changed how it has its storage. Now there's a little wet storage pocket in the back that's great for your rope, or if you want to put your flip-flops in there, it'll hold it. But like we said earlier, the glove boxes, why don't you throw that one open up to a U-shape or a horseshoe-shaped storage pocket that's about 10 gallons big. That's a lot of room, and most people don't need more than 10 gallons. You can put a hoodie in there, some flip-flops, your wallet, a phone, whatever you need to drag along if you're just out for a couple hours. But when it comes to big storage, you gotta get into the front storage bin, and that's where we got a problem. The Kawasaki was, for the longest time, the single largest storage of any watercraft in the market, over 60 gallons of storage. We're now looking at just a hair over 44 gallons. And there's something to be said about how they arrange the front storage.
The front storage compartment, it's not that it's small, but the opening is so small it's almost unusable. I carried an ice chest cooler with me today, and it's a backpack. It's very small, it's easy to carry, and it almost did not fit in the front to the point where I had to force it in and force it out because the opening is just that small.
It's the most interesting thing, only because we understand in design and getting this really neat kind of Formula One looking rake of a hood on there, it calls for a narrow opening. But at the cost of killing your storage access, I think is kind of a mistake. And I know that we've been kind of harsh on the new Ultras and how they've changed the front storage, but it really does matter, especially when you're going out on full day or even 2-day rides like we've been doing this weekend. So the front storage thing is really a pinch point that we got to knock some points off for the Kawasaki. So I think the big thing that we got to talk about is we've got a lot of seat time on both of these machines, and we've encountered not a huge variety of water. We're in freshwater, lots of glass. It's been tremendous this last few days, but we have been crossed up in a big group. We have cut up some chop. I want to get your take on how the new Ultra rides.
The ride is actually very nice. Any little chop we did encounter, while not much, it really just absorbed it all. It didn't rattle our teeth out. It was a good, comfortable ride, and a straight ride at that. I didn't have to fight the bars to keep it going where I wanted it to go. Wherever I pointed the bars, that's where it went.
Good. And one of the attributes that I've been really keen on, especially with the lower center of gravity, is the response of the Ultra to rider input. Like you said, when it comes to a big sweep or a tight hairpin, the Ultra behaves like a ski that's a lot smaller or lighter.
Absolutely. If anything, this feels like a smaller ski than the Sea-Doo does.
Yeah.
It performs better than it.
Now, we did pick up something interesting that was unique to having the Ultra deck. And although the Ultra deck does not extend the hull or the wetted running surface, it does provide a little bit of behavior change if you are riding aggressively.
Correct. So in a high-speed hairpin turn, it almost felt like the back end was lifting up and just kind of sliding out. Was it uncontrollable? No, but you definitely did feel it, and it's something that you want to take note of.
Yeah, the Watercraft is actually producing a little bit of lift as that trailing edge bites into the water, and because of that resistance, it is actually pulling up or providing lift in that tail, and that's exactly what you're feeling when you're out and doing chicanes. So you and I have spent a lot of time on the ST3. This is kind of old hat for us, but it is important to compare how does the ST3 handle on its own, and then let's see which one we liked better.
Well, I went to take, so the ST3 is kind of weird what they do with the platform, because you've got an X model, you've got the GTX, and you've got a few different watercraft, but the main difference between the hull, I think, is the sponsons. So with these GTX sponsons on there, I went to put in a high-speed hairpin turn, and after one, I was done, you know? I hate to say that, but I put it in a turn, and the sponson had grip in the beginning, and then it just lost its bite, and I was very disappointed in that.
I think it's important to note just what role a sponson plays when it comes to altering the behavior of a hull design. And I think a lot of people are a little ambiguous as to what a sponson does. And we've done multiple articles and videos at the Watercraft Journal for you for that, and we're gonna link them up above. But as just a bit of a recap, that sponson is providing so much necessary bite at the tail that if you don't have a good aggressive sponson, you'll lose the tail and you lose all traction, and that really flat ST3 bottom is gonna wash out behind you. And you can feel it, it's almost kind of loose and fun, but when you got a 300 horsepower ski and you got someone behind you, loose and fun is probably not what you're looking for.
Right.
So when it comes to the ST3, I think you're exactly right that it's asking too much of one hull design to do too much. It's got to be an RX TX, it's got to be a GTX, it's got to be a Wake Pro, it's got to be a Fish Pro, it's got to be an Explorer Pro. It's got to be all these things at once, so it's got to be a high performance, aggressive machine, and then it's got to be a slow, stable, good platform for fishing. So it's kind of a master of none in the sense that it can't do everything that the entire Sea-Doo lineup is asking it to do.
Exactly.
As we talked a little bit about sponsons, I also want to note a little bit about the behavior of the ST3 that a lot of people might not be able to name or identify, and that is what you and I have called a lot of times bow hunting. And that bow hunting is a little bit of a searching feeling. What you're going to get is that really pronounced keel, that really pronounced line that runs off the front of that watercraft, it catches. So if you find like a wake, or if you're in a group of people and you get a lot of that cross chop, you'll find that the watercraft is searching for its line. It can't find a true line. And so you get a little bit of that back and forth sliding feeling that is really unsettling. It can be a little scary to a person who's new to a watercraft, and they are going to be putting a lot of input in the bars versus the Ultra. And I got to say, the Ultra is, without a doubt, my personal favorite hull when it comes to a full-size 3-seater. The Ultra is, without a doubt, the best rough water hull. And more people are concerned about, hey, how does it handle and chop versus, well, you know, I just want to make sure I don't get wet. So, yeah, you might get a little wet, but the splash reflectors are there, but I'd rather be tracking true and chop in rough water and going through a straight line than being darting all over the place. Call me crazy, but I got to give it to the Ultra when it comes to hull design.
I definitely agree with you with the hull. The Sea-Doo almost scares me sometimes. Can I manage it? Absolutely. But if I put a novice on there in a group setting, it would get a little scary. But the hull is way better than the Sea-Doo. But I find that the ergonomics and the seating position on the Sea-Doo is way better, and it just feels like a sporty craft to me when I'm sitting in the saddle.
Yeah, not to repeat the talking points, the marketing talking points, but you really do feel like you're sitting in a Sea-Doo.
You do. Versus
the Cowie. Now, I'll tell you this though, Cowie made huge efforts to narrow the seat and get you further into the ski, to drop the rider position. I mean, I'll tell you what, you did it, I did it. You drop a knee out there, you're cutting corners in a full-size Ultra on the rail, and you're like, oh, well, that's kind of new. This guy turns flat. This guy needs sponsons desperately. Yep. But I will tell you, ergonomically, a young guy in good shape, a guy who's got a bad back, or an older rider who's got a bad hip, they're loving this thing.
Yeah.
They're absolutely loving the ergonomics of it. And to be honest, a dry ride's a dry ride. So you got to give it to Sea-Doo for a dry ride, great ergonomics, tremendous balance.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pluses, there's some negatives. I think when it comes up to adding up the total, I really am impressed with what Kawasaki did with the Ultra. I think some things like the front storage, oh my gosh, that's not my favorite. And I would prefer not to have the engine cover, but I get the reason why, because it allows for the seat, the adjustable seat. Okay, fine, I'll roll over on that one. But I don't know, man. I'm going Cowie.
So I've got some gripes with these two.
Okay. Air your grievances.
Yeah.
All right.
So both of them, I think the user interface is just terrible.
Oh, with the phones?
Yeah, the whole screen, it's a lot of information to process. There's a lot more stuff that I'm wasting my time doing rather than riding when I'm out on the water.
Yeah.
The Kawasaki, for me, it had a few bugs. The Sea-Doo's got a lot going on. Both of them, I honestly could just do without it.
Yeah, but these are the luxury units. So
Yeah.
that guy wants the Escalade. That guy wants everything.
I just find they could have done something a little different and it just not be so overwhelming.
I agree. Yeah.
Other than that, I really think it's a tough decision. And I think it really depends on what you're looking for. If you want a slow, dry, stable ride with a good seating position, take the Sea-Doo. But if you want something that actually packs a punch with some performance, handles better, it rides in rough water better, you can't go wrong with the Kawasaki.
Okay, all right. So we're here in Morgan City at Mudbug. We'd be crazy not to do acceleration testing. So we snuck out earlier this morning and we got both these machines completely topped off with fuel, which I know you guys are gonna complain about, and I don't really care, all right? 18.5 gallons, 21.1 gallons. It is what it is. It's what the skis carry, and we're doing it fully loaded. So we did our acceleration testing. I did take the cooler off the back, so don't freak out and think that we had the cooler on the back of the Sea-Doo 2. But what do we do this morning?
So we did some testing from starting at 5 miles an hour, and of course, we do that because you cannot do a 0 to 60 on a jet ski because it's never stopped at a true 0 miles per hour. But the Kawasaki did 5 to 60 in 4.6 seconds.
Okay.
And a top speed of 67 miles per hour flat.
Funny, okay.
Right, but these are speed limited watercraft. This has a very hard limiter. You feel it kick in when it does.
Right, it
and it's
drops.
supposed to be limited to 67 miles per hour,
Right.
and that's what it did. Now the Sea-Doo, it went from 5 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, so half a second faster, but it also did 70.4 miles per hour. Now the Sea-Doo, we know it doesn't have a hard limiter.
Not really.
I don't really count top speed because they're all speed limited. This one has a harder limiter than that one does.
Right.
But the Sea-Doo was a half a second quicker to 60.
There you go. I mean, honestly, if you're the guy who's gonna modify your ski, you put a SCOM on that, it's going 75.
Right.
You put a SCOM on this, it's going 75. And the
Yeah.
guys at K-Speed are already going 74, 75
Yep.
with a brand new 22 with a SCOM on it, which is a speed control override module for you guys not knowing what SCOM means. That's okay. So we are losing half a second. That's considerable in a drag race.
Yep.
But again, these are fully loaded machines, and we're talking an extra 109 pounds over this guy and a far more flat hull. A lot of people are like, wow, this makes 10 more horsepower. Well, it's also got 100 pounds more. And this has a very flat hull versus a very deep V hull, which means it's got a lot more drag. So comparatively, that's not too bad.
Right, and I really think the half a second, if you ride both of these back to back, you're not going to feel a half a second difference.
No.
The only time you'll notice a difference is in a drag race.
Yep. So that's our comparison between the 2022 Sea-Doo GTX Limited 300 and the 2022 Kawasaki Ultra 310LX. So I really want to thank Greg from Greenhulk Garage. Where can we find you?
You can find me on greenhulk.net, the Greenhulk Garage YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Greg Gaddis.
Very cool. I'm Kevin Shaw. You've been watching the Watercraft Journal. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. Really appreciate it and helping us grow the channel. And if you want more awesome jet ski content, please check us out at www.watercraftjournal.com, where new articles are written and published every day, Monday through Friday, entirely subscription free to you.